I think I'm going to switch back to the S24 Ultra for maybe a little while longer. I'm actually learning to love the Android ecosystem and all it can do. Hey, my name is Pete, and I love reviewing the latest tech.
Flexing.
As someone who's worked in technology for the past 20 years, I love just seeing how tech enhances the lives of just regular people. Lately, I've been really interested in trying out all of the latest Android phones with all of the new tech that they offer. And most recently, I switched from my iPhone 15 Pro Max to the S24 Ultra. It's been 3 months now, using it as my main phone with my SIM card in it. I switched away from the Apple Watch Ultra, I swapped my iPad for the Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra. I'm even using my Mac less as I start using my Windows PC more and more. Now, spoiler alert, the Switch has actually been really great. I've been able to solve so many of the problems that I mentioned in my previous videos, and as I hope you'll be able to see from this series of videos that I've made on switching to the S24 Ultra, it's been a bit of a journey, which, by the way, subscribe if you want to see more of that. Now, I really wanted to show what it is really like for many people who have used an iPhone for like forever to switch from iPhone to Android, because it's just not as simple as swapping phones. Now, this time I locked away my iPhone for the first 30 days, which really forced me to find solutions to any problems that came up, instead of just reaching for my iPhone anytime something didn't work the way I expected it to. And when you're going from iOS 17 to the latest One UI 6.1, it is quite a big change. Now, I know in the US, Apple has something like a 60% market share, and it's more like 90% for teenagers in the US. But what do people say? Variety is the spice of life. So it's kind of fun to use not an iPhone for a while and just see what the fuss is all about. And in reality, the process of switching from iPhone to an Android phone to the S24 Ultra was much easier than I first thought. So, as far as the actual switch goes, it's pretty straightforward, but there are a few things that you need to do to make the switch much easier. Now, the first one for me is transferring all of my photos from Apple Photos, and the best way I found to do this was just install Google Photos onto my iPhone, which then backs up all of those photos up into Google's Photos. Then you just open up Google Photos on your Android phone, and everything's there. Now, some of the ecosystem can be quite tricky to move depending on how much you actually use them. I replaced FaceTime, for example, with just video calling on other platforms. For iMessages, I know it's a big thing, but it was really only my family using them, so I just switched all of my conversations over to other messaging apps. And I've been using an app called Beeper just to keep all my chats in one place, so yeah, no more blue bubbles for me. Now, if you use Find My to find your friends or your family, just get them to install Google Maps on their phones and then share their locations. That works great. Now, I think one of the trickiest things to move is if you use Apple's keychain to store all your passwords. Now, luckily, I don't use Apple's keychain to store my passwords. I have them stored in an app called 1Password, which means I can then get to my usernames, passwords, bank account, credit card information, even my passport is all stored in there. And I can access it now on both iOS and Android phones. Now, if you are using Keychain, you'll need to then export them from Safari and then import them into either 1Password, Google Chrome, or whatever you want to use as your password manager. Now, my personal choice has been 1Password. I've been using them for probably more than 10 years now, and they did kindly agree to sponsor this video with a 50% discount off of either a personal or a family subscription, which you can find down below. So, to avoid just rehashing what I've already said in previous videos, and in terms of the overall experience of using Android and specifically the S24 Ultra, I have been pleasantly surprised. I find the S24 Ultra is much faster at connecting and disconnecting from Wi-Fi and cellular data. Like literally, as I leave my house, I jump in my car, I try and close my garage door, which has a really cheap $30 smart thing fitted so I can control it from my phone. My iPhone just sits there, connected to Wi-Fi, even though it's actually out of range, and tries, and then it fails to control and then, close my garage door. And don't even get me started on trying to use to do this. Now, I have not had a single issue with the speed of this phone. It is absolutely rapid. And I'm not the sort of person who closes down all the apps every time I use them, and I just leave everything open. I never turn my phone off, and it all just works really, really well. Now, in terms of the display on this phone, I love it. I love the anti-glare coating. It's honestly one of the best I've ever used on a phone before. It is bright enough to see outside on even the brightest of days, not that we get many of those here in the UK. Now, yes, the phone screen does still scratch if you really try hard enough. And actually, if you go and watch someone like Jerry Rig Everything, you'll see that it is more scratch resistant than it was before. But yeah, you can still scratch it. Now, I do like that they fixed the issues with the colors looking a bit flat when they pushed the latest update with a slider under the vivid settings to make colors richer. And given how bright and how good the display is, it's also crazy that battery life is one of the best you can get in a flagship phone so far. It's been, I would say, just about better than my iPhone. And the fact it charges up to 45 watts and gets you over, I think it's like 60% charge in 30 minutes of charging is really, really handy for those days you just need that quick boost charge before heading out for the night. Okay, so I still think this feature is a kind of a gimmick. I don't find myself circling to search something, every day. But the other day I went to a gig in central London, and from where I was taking videos and photos and zooming all the way in. And this is really random, but I saw one of the guys wearing some shoes I quite like the look of. And damn, circle to search actually worked really well. I zoomed in, I snapped a photo, did circle to search on the shoes, and it actually found them, which is crazy, going from here, sat miles away, to being able to identify and find the exact shoes the singer was wearing. It's really, really cool. And speaking of which, the cameras. Now, I did say in my last video that I wasn't so keen on the cameras this time around, and honestly, the weather in the UK has just been so awful this year, so I don't have much to go on yet. But the photos this camera takes have been great so far. Having the versatility of the 5x lens that goes up to 10 times optical quality is really nice to have. Now, it does pretty well in some challenging situations. I took my kid go-karting for the first time ever this weekend just gone. Fairly low light, but it came out great. And the one thing that I would say here is that I have had a few shots that have just totally missed the focus on. Now, I couldn't tell you if, the iPhone would have performed better here because I just didn't have the iPhone, but it is weird that it decided to focus on the background when there is, obviously and clearly people in the photos. But I would still say that we are really now just splitting hairs when it comes to specifically photo quality. It's personal preference whether you like the style of the iPhone or the Pixel or the Samsung. And video quality on the S24 Ultra, pretty damn good too, and very, very close to the iPhone's quality. Now, other really nice features here, being able to record long conversations with multiple people in the room and then have Galaxy AI summarize the whole meeting. Yes, it does have some work to do. It's not 100% accurate. I mean, it's not even 50% accurate, but you do get the general gist of what's going on in the meeting. And I think of all the Galaxy AI features, this really is one of the very few that I actually use fairly often. In addition to text to call, where I can use Bixby, I think it is, to answer my incoming calls and then filter for any spam calls. And actually, if you set the language to English US on your phone under the text to call features, it gives you the option to create your own custom voice using your own voice. Who might have purchased an English Bulldog tonight? Am I crazy now, or did I see a rainbow earlier? So that it uses your voice to then answer those calls.
This is what it sounds like when you use text call. This is what it sounds like when you use text call.
Now, my voice really doesn't sound anything like my voice does on my phone.
This is what it sounds.
And I find most people just hang up as they think it's a pre-recorded answer phone or something. But from what I understand, it works much better in the US. They just haven't quite figured out how to replicate a proper British accent just yet.
Don't you mean a bottle of water? A bottle of water?
Speaking of which, I do love that with Android you can play around with and installs like spam caller apps, which then help identify and block spam calls. And actually, I love that there's a certain level of this just built into Android. Now on iPhone, I constantly get spam text messages, spam phone calls, and then I have to block the number of each one of them. But on Android and on the S24 Ultra, 99% of those calls and texts are just blocked to begin with. And And with the latest update, you can actually tag dodgy calls so you can remember who they are without having to actually add them to your contacts, which you obviously don't really want to do. You don't want to fill up your contacts with a load of spam numbers. And then we have the S Pen. Now, I seem to go through phases of using it a lot and then not using it at all. I'm kind of currently in a phase of not using it at all, but it does always come in clutch with my kids. Like, they are obsessed and they keep asking if they can draw on my phone when we're, out and about and places like restaurants. It is a great way to entertain them if they just won't sit still. Now, yes, I know I'm one of those parents. And then we come to privacy, which Apple is, of course, a huge advocate of, your data being your data and nobody else's, unless, of course, they want to serve you ads. Now, the other day, my wife's iPhone popped up to say one of her passwords was compromised and then being sold on the dark web or something, which, as far as I can tell, Android doesn't offer this feature, not even if it's stored in, like Samsung Knox. Maybe let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong there. Now, luckily, Have I Been Owned showed me which website it was, so I just kind of looked on there, hopped into 1Password, and then changed the 1Password conveniently. But that issue aside, it is refreshing to see these other privacy features on the S24, which Apple may or may not getting around to implementing sometime in like 2035.
Absolutely.
Things like having a secure folder where you can place certain apps or files and lock it away with a password, like a uniquely set password, or private browsing mode with Samsung's own browser, which has, you guessed it, an entirely separately set password to access, and the ability to hide photos and videos to the point where they remain locally on your device. They don't get synced up to Google or Samsung Cloud, Microsoft Bing, or whatever it's going to. Now, if you value these things, it is really nice that there are features actually that exist to protect it. Now, I've always wondered why Apple hasn't been able to do something as simple as password protecting a simple folder. It's just really frustrating. Now, so what about the ecosystem? It is the one main reason that many people say is stopping them from switching away from Apple to something else. It's kind of why the US is literally currently suing Apple for locking everybody out of their the walled garden and not allowing non-Apple devices to access features like iMessage is a big one at the moment, and all the watch health data. Well, in terms of the iPads, I've swapped my iPad mini and my 12.9-inch iPad Pro for a Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra, which has been a huge pleasure to use. It works so well. And actually, I even swapped my kids' iPads with, this was like a year ago now or so, with a Google Pixel tablet. And both my kid absolutely loves it. I love the Family Link app, so you can set daily limits or gift more time. And the tablet updates instantly, so that saves a ton of tears when their time runs out on something. Now, if you're using Windows, you can use Phone Link to get pretty much the same like Apple experience ecosystem thing between an iPhone and a Mac, but you could get that on a Windows system with an Android phone. Messages all now live on other apps. I've been using this app called Beeper for the last, 3 years maybe, which puts all of my chats into one app. And since their new UI update, which is on Android now, it is so much nicer to use. Now, I rarely FaceTime people. Google Photos and Google Drive store all of my photos, my videos, all of my data. Android Auto is okay, but the Apple Watch is always one of the many devices that people say is the one and only reason for sticking with an iPhone. And I think that is a fair point. But as someone who has been getting more into my health and my fitness as I get older, I picked up this Garmin watch recently, and I made a whole video about it recently, which I'll link to down below. But it is genuinely has been so good to use. Like, yes, it doesn't have Siri or LTE, but it does have a week plus battery life. It has buttons, which means you can use it underwater. It tracks everything, including being able to literally count your reps as you're lifting weights. And I just love how it can auto import your workouts into places like Strava, which, by the way, follow me on Strava, Instagram, TikTok, all the places, just at Pete Matheson. Now, the more and more I use the Garmin, the less I find myself missing the Apple Watch, even though I do miss some of the features on there. Even simple things like when traveling to the US, I can use the Calculator app on my watch to just quickly calculate how much to tip people. So I will likely, for now, continue swapping watches between, certain watches for certain situations. Garmin for the fitness stuff, maybe the Apple Watch for other things. I'm not really sure yet. I don't really know which watch I should be using most mornings, so I end up just wearing both. But if anything, that just goes to show how good the Garmin watch is, because I'm yet to find any other watch that works on Android phones that can really compete with the Apple Watch Ultra. Now, I genuinely have got to a place with using the S24 Ultra where I don't really suffer any issues, aside from a couple of issues which I'm still experiencing on the S24 Ultra after 3 months. Now, firstly, the NFC reader on the back. I've said this before, I've had so many people saying in my comments either one of two things. Either this happens to me all the time, or that's never happened to me ever on any Samsung phone I've ever owned. So this is literally happening to me across 2 S24 Ultra phones and both a regular S24 and an S24 Plus, which are both running the Exynos chip in them. Now, I bought the S24 Ultra myself, and then the other 3 phones were sent to me by Samsung when it launched. So I would say that between Samsung sending these to me and then me buying my own phones, there are enough of them here to say that this is a problem. Now, which one is mine? There we go. Too many phones. Now, the next question is, what is it a problem with? For contactless payments using Samsung Pay or Google Pay, I do find that you have to get the positioning like spot on. Otherwise, the card readers get confused and you have to pull the phone away and then try again for like the NFC chip on the phone to sort of reactivate. Now, where I always seem to have problems though is at my local gym. Now, I don't know if it's the NFC readers they're using. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works if I hold it there for a few seconds. It just does different things on different days of the week, and it's really, really frustrating. Now, I actually posted a question to my gym group on Facebook, and all the replies basically mirror my experience and my thoughts. Like, funnily enough, the iPhone is a resounding yes, it works all the time, and it's about 50-50 with Android users saying it works and those saying that it doesn't work. And I guess even more interestingly, most of the comments are talking about either the S22, S23 or S24. So there is definitely something going on there, whether it is just the phone or just the NFC chip in the door entry system that they're using. Now, the second still frustrating issue is custom notification sounds. Now, don't get me wrong, the ability to customize basically every single notification on the entire phone is really great. It's something you cannot do on an iPhone. I can turn on or turn off like specific notifications from specific apps. I can even set a custom sound for each of those specific notification types if I really want to. But the reason why this is a frustration for me is that because, well, firstly, by default, custom notification sounds are switched off, which I really don't understand why. And then to switch them on, it's listed under advanced settings. Like, really? Advanced settings? Now, I have found a lot of apps just use the same standard sound. And honestly, I'm a busy person between like work, family, hanging out with friends. I don't really have like a few hours to go through, download custom ringtones and manually set these on every app. Now, one of the ones I've come to rely on with my iPhone was with various Ring cameras around the house that play this loud, like very long, very recognizable sound when motion's detected. Now, I basically use this when I'm sat outside in the garden once the kids have gone to bed. So when I hear the notification on my phone, I know that, you know, one of the kids are out of bed and might be coming downstairs, like wondering where we disappeared to. But on the S24 Ultra, it's missing all of these built-in sounds and defaults to the default Samsung sound. So just by listening, I can't tell if it's my doorbell, the kids out of bed, or just a text or email notification. But I will say that overall, you know, of course, if you are someone who likes to have a custom sound for certain apps or certain people, then it is great that you can do this on the S24. Now, one of the other things I did complain about before was that I found the One UI launcher just a little slow. Now, I like having very few apps on my home screen, something I can't do on the iPhone really, and then just swiping to search each time I open something. And yes, I did try going into developer settings and reducing or even removing the animation speed, but it was still slow. It's more of a case that the search box appears before the keyboard was ready, which kind of was frustrating. But again, since this is an Android, in a world where basically everything is possible, I just installed a new launcher. I went with Nova Launcher, and actually I subscribed to this one a couple of years ago or so, and it never lets me down. So with Nova Launcher replacing One UI as like the overall skin for my phone, I can now swipe up to do an instant search, which actually works, but I can also do cool things with gestures, like if I swipe down or swipe up on another app icon, it can launch a totally different app. Or if I swipe down anywhere on the screen, it brings down my notifications without having to swipe all the way from the top of the phone. And the keyboard issue I mentioned last time with like my spelling being all over the place, I've been able to work around by installing Grammarly, which just sits there and kind of checks my spelling and grammar at the touch of a button. It's far better than, in my opinion, than Samsung's own AI spell check and then rewriting system, since that takes a few taps each time to use. Whereas this thing just does it as you go, and again, one tap at a time will fix anything that the Samsung keyboard just totally misspells. Now, so far, my experience switching has actually been really, really great. I've really enjoyed it. Like I said in the intro, I just really like experiencing different tech and seeing how it works. I do find that with Android in general, you get to see way more new features that you just can't find elsewhere, because the features all come to Android phones first. Now, I would say the one thing that does worry me with Android, and I guess Samsung specifically, is the support. Now, with an iPhone, I know I can either call up or even drive to a local Apple store that's within 30 minutes of where I live and get the problem resolved. Like, their Apple Care has saved me a ton of times. I've seen Apple replace my dad's old, like, out of warranty iPhone with a brand new iPhone just because they said that it looked like he'd taken care of it. I've personally had Apple replace a 3-year-old MacBook Pro, which was only just still in warranty, with a brand new model because they no longer sold the model that I had at no additional cost to me. So I left with a brand new machine. I've been on holiday with my kids and I managed to drown my iPhone 11, I think it was. And the next day, there was a brand new, or I guess a refurbished brand new, iPhone 11 waiting on my doorstep back home. And of course, when I smashed my Apple Watch Ultra, they shipped a brand new one out to me, well, again, brand new refurbished, I guess, straight out to me in less than 12 hours. So that is pretty damn good as far as Apple's concerned. Whereas on the Samsung side of things, my experience of Samsung support hasn't been that great over the years. Now, when I tried calling in for issues with my Samsung monitors, I've got quite a few of them around here, the best I got back was, oh, it's a Windows problem, or it's not been tested with a Mac, so we can't help you. The nearest Samsung store, if I wanted to take it in, is more than 2 hours drive away from here. And when I did send my watch in for a repair, I had to wait 2 weeks with no communication from them until suddenly it just was delivered back to me. And that is with paying extra for like Samsung's Care Plus. So it does worry me that if it was to happen with my phone and my one and only phone, what would I do for those 2 weeks whilst waiting for a repair? So it is worth taking how good and accessible that customer support is into consideration, if of course that is important to you. But I will say, before you check out the S24 Ultra, and if you really don't need that 5x photo lens, I would highly recommend checking out the regular S24. And you can watch either of those two videos right here. Subscribe to the channel for more, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.